I'd like to call this meeting of the Board of Education for the School District of Baraboo to order for Monday, April the 23rd, 2012, with roll call. Mr. Borkenhagen. Mr. Cummings.
Here.
Mr. McNevin.
Here.
Mr. Meering. Mr. Mortimer.
Here.
Mr. Vidro.
Here.
And Bodak here. Continue with the pledge. The flag is on the screen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I would entertain a motion that it be resolved the Board of Education approve the minutes of the April 9th, 2012 meeting as printed.
Second.
Motion by Mortimer, seconded by Cummings. Any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries and minutes are approved. Brings us to the portion of the agenda for the Board of Education reorganization. And first up, we have to swear in our new board member. So if I could have Mo Riley come up by Mr. Cummings. We will swear you in, and we have a seat all set for you right over here. So as soon as you're sworn in, you can have your seat.
You will stand there. I'll give you this here. If you would raise your right hand and read this right here, that would be easier than me.
I, Maureen Mo Riley, having been elected to the office of Board of Education of the School District of Baraboo, swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin, and will faithfully and impartially discharge the duties of said office to the best of my ability. So help me God.
Welcome aboard.
Yes, I am.
You should have this memorized by now. Raise your right hand and then repeat.
I, Sean McNevin, having been elected to the office of Board of Education of the School District of Baraboo, swear that I support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin, and will faithfully and impartially discharge the duties of said office to the best of my ability. So help me God.
Congratulations.
Congratulations to Ms. Riley and congratulations to Mr. McNevin for their election results and oath of office and seating with us at the table tonight. So thank you. Congratulations. Brings us to the portion of the agenda entitled Election of 2012-2013 Board of Education Officers.
I move to accept the current slate as given.
I'll second that.
We have a motion for a continuation of the current officers and board recorder from the previous year. Any discuss and a second motion? Second on the motion? Any discussion?
Since Doug's not here, can't we punish him with a couple more offices?
We could switch him with Mary, you mean? Any further discussion? Hearing none, I would thus close the nominations and ask for the approval of a unanimous white ballot of the current slate of officers for the board. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carried. Congratulations to those officers, and we will look forward to a very productive year. Next on the agenda is for the appointment of the board committees and representatives, and we can primarily for board information. Those committees can change throughout the year. Typically they don't. So I would entertain a motion to approve the committee assignments, and I would also move for the approval of Doug as our CISA representative and as our delegate, with me being the alternate for the 2013, I'm sorry, convention.
Mr. Chairman, could you just read who those
I
committee
certainly
assignments are?
can. The Buildings, Grounds, and Transportation Committee will be chaired by Mr. Cummings. Members of that committee, Building, Grounds, and Transportation, along with Mr. Cummings, Mr. Mortimer, and myself. The Education Direction Committee to be chaired by Mr. Meering, with the representatives from the board, in addition to Mr. Meering on that committee, Mr. McNevin and Ms. Riley. The Finance Committee to be chaired by Mr. McNevin, and the committee members to be Mr. Cummings and Mr. Mortimer. The Personnel Committee to be chaired by myself, with the committee members Mr. McNevin and Mr. Vidro, and the Policy and Educational Legislation Committee to be chaired by Mr. Meering, and the board members representing would be Ms. Riley and Mr. Vidro. And again, the CISA rep, Mr. Meering, and Doug would be the delegate for the convention for the Wisconsin Association of School Boards, and I would be the alternate.
I would make a motion to accept the committees as read.
I can second.
Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you.
When was the last time Ed Direction met? I mean, we didn't meet, I think I was on the
Right.
committee last year, we never met, so.
Right.
Is it necessary to have a committee?
That's
It's
a
a
good question. It used to be a standing committee. Typically, they met during the lunch hour, but part of our agenda now for the entire board is to come forward with continuous school improvement. Because what we were finding is the same discussions and presentations that were occurring at the educational direction were also occurring with the full board. So I don't know, that's a good question, whether that committee needs to
But that
exist.
committee is, by policy, a committee, correct?
Yeah, we would have to
So
change
that would
policy.
have to be addressed at policy, which is certainly fine.
Looks like Mr. Meering could take care of both those problems at once.
Absolutely. We could certainly look into that.
Well, I would suggest that the Educational Direction Committee has to do with ensuring that we are moving it according to our strategic plan within the educational direction of the strategic plan. The Policy and Education Legislative Committee has to do with the relationship between the district and our legislature, and I see those as different entities.
Well, I don't think there was a suggestion to merge the two, but as Crystal said, having been on the Educational Direction Committee in the past, typically what would happen is we would be the first meeting place for initiatives, the first meeting place for educational programs that were suggested to be implemented. And what ended up happening towards the end is we would have an hour-and-a-half, 2-hour-long meeting. We'd ask the same people to come back and present to the full board because we didn't think it was fair to have had that opportunity to ask the questions, to hear the presentations, and make a recommendation to the board, the rest of the board not having heard the full presentation. So most of the Educational Direction Committee items have become board agenda items. It's not that we're eliminating them or that they're being under some other umbrella of policy or legislation, but it's certainly something that could be looked into, and because it is a policy, that discussion would start at the policy committee if the board so chooses to eliminate it. Thank you for your observation there, Mr. McNevin. Brings us to the part of the agenda entitled correspondence. I have no correspondence. Oh, I'm sorry. 2 board members for graduation. Get ahead of myself. I would be more than happy to attend the graduation. Mr. Meering has a daughter that is graduating and has asked that he be part of the team that represents. There was a time in the past we had more than 2 board members, but it gets a little bit tight up on the stage. Does anybody have any personal interest in wanting to be at graduation? Anybody, son, daughter graduating, that it would be important for you to have an opportunity to present a diploma? Anybody? Hearing none of that, is everybody okay if Doug and I present at the graduation ceremony?
So moved.
Second.
Motioned and seconded. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you. All right, now on to correspondence, of which I have none. Any other board members with correspondence? administrative correspondence.
I have two pieces to share tonight. The first is from Claremont Graduate University and the Quality of Life Research Center. And they've sent communication recognizing Dave Hosley as an exemplary mentor in the positive development of junior colleagues in the profession. Dave just happens to be with us tonight. You probably didn't know I was going to do this. But he was nominated by a teacher here at the high school and received a recognition notice back and or certificate. And so I just wanted to share that we have a lot of teachers involved in mentoring others who are entering the profession as new educators, and that's an important piece. The second good piece of news I have is that you may have heard of the state scholar athletes recently announced. It was embargoed until April 19th. For those of you that aren't familiar with it, there are 32 scholar athlete finalists chosen from 800 nominees from over 400 districts in the state. Baraboo we have one student who's the proud recipient of that. To determine the top 32 finalists, they have to be selected based on both athletic and academic achievement. 17 of the year's 32 finalists had a grade point average of 4.0. And many of them earned a total of 306 letters, an average of 9 letters per athlete during their first 3.5 years of high school. So we're happy that in Division I, Garrett Bruni is being recognized. He has a 4.0 GPA. He has participated in cross country, basketball, and track. He has a scholarship for UW-Milwaukee for track and cross country. And his leadership includes being a member of Link Crew, Student Council, and Key Club. So we're really happy that he's being recognized for his efforts.
Thank you. Any further administrative correspondence? Hearing none, I'd like to move on to the section of the agenda entitled Public Viewpoints. Do we have anybody here for public viewpoints tonight? Do we have any public viewpoints? Do we have any public viewpoints? Hearing none, I'd like to move on to what I believe to be the most rewarding portion of our agenda on a weekly basis, and that is our staff and student recognition. And we have with us tonight Beth Cook and Marlis Greenhall and Taylor St. Clair, John Leopold, Pedro Menendez, and Nicole Luke. So I will turn it over for the presentation for us tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having us here tonight. We're very proud of our department and our students, and we want to share with you some information about the art department here. First of all, I'm Marlis Greenhall, and this is Beth Crook, and we have a student teacher this semester, Emily Rich from UW-Madison. Our art department offers students experience in a variety of art media. Students have the opportunity to participate in statewide competitions and to get involved locally as they define their own identity in art. We offer beginning, intermediate, and advanced art courses in 2 and 3D media. Students have the opportunity to see presentations by art colleges and exhibits at Madison and Milwaukee art museums. This year, for the first time, students participated in a project called the Memory Project, and this is a unique initiative in which art students create portraits, drawings, paintings, digital art, etc., for children and teens around the world who have been orphaned, neglected, or disadvantaged. To do this, the artists receive photos of kids waiting for portraits and then work from those photos to create the portraits. Next, the portraits are hand-delivered to the kids as gifts. The Memory Project takes photos of this so that the artists can see these special moments. The goal of the project is to inspire caring, global friendship, and a positive sense of self. Shown here is Maddie Ginther, a junior, with the portrait she made of a child in Sierra Leone.
Right.
So, my name is Beth Kirk, like she mentioned before. This is my second year teaching art here. And two of the classes that I teach are 3D Foundations and 3D Art and Design. And behind me you'll see some examples of some of those 3D art projects. We focus on things like ceramics, sculpture, we do some metalworking, and well, glass work as well, something that we're introducing this year. So would you mind going to the next one? Here, thank you. So in our foundations level, we start out with, the basics of all of these different mediums, and then art and design, the students have an opportunity to build on those skills. So here you see two of the metal pieces done in the foundations class this year, and two ceramic projects created by students in the 3D art and design class. So, this is Tanner. We also wanted to highlight some of our exclusive art opportunities for students with special needs. This student comes in most days first hour, sometimes her schedule doesn't allow, and creates art in her own way. So we set up paints and markers and different options for her, and one thing we're really focusing on with Tanner right now is choice, for her to make the decisions about which colors she wants to be using and which medium she wants to be using. So she's a nonverbal student, and it's really a really cool thing to watch her communicate through art in a different way than she's been able to before. So it's been a really rewarding experience for me.
This is some work from 2D Art and Design, where students develop drawing skills, printmaking methods, color theory, painting, and design. Students also study art history and contemporary art. This is a scene where students go out into the hallways and draw on site, and this is Kevin Tobin's graphite drawing. He's a sophomore. In photography, we offer digital experience working with Adobe Photoshop, where students manipulate images, incorporate typography, do silkscreen, and exhibit and present their work. This was a movie poster project that students created by combining and manipulating images and type. The poster on the left is by Max Yavinsky, a senior, and on the right is John Leopold's work, and you'll be meeting him momentarily. Advanced art projects, students specialize in their chosen media and develop portfolio quality work and participate in exhibitions. Taylor St. Clair is an advanced art student, and she's here this evening. And she's going to show you a piece that she did and talk a little bit about the process. Taylor has been very active in art as photography. She participated in Youth Art Month and also several other exhibitions.
I just wanted to say a couple words. My name's Taylor, like she said. I have many art classes with these two wonderful women, and we do, in my advanced art class, we do projects that are assigned to us, as well as things that we want to explore that's different than we usually have. This was something that I've never done before, and Miss Greenhall had introduced it, and I was really interested, and I found that I really enjoy it. And my next project is a bird bath with mosaic that I'm doing, and I just wanted to say that this art program is, something I really enjoy, and I'm down there all day, and I'm only junior, so I really enjoy it, and I thank them a lot.
We also offer a commercial art class. Commercial art students work with the Adobe Creative Suite, learning software methods, terminology that are part of the publishing industry today. A student, Hunter Higgins, who's now a senior, created a logo in commercial art that he has used as his own trademark brand, and he's been quite successful imprinting that Royal brand on all sorts of things that he makes available to students to purchase. Also, students do off-computer design inspired by master artists throughout time.
Okay, so this brings us, I'd like to introduce Pedro Menendez. Come on up here. So behind me you see a picture of Pedro in front of his newly finished mural. He worked on this last semester. We do offer the opportunity for senior students to leave their mark behind in the school and leave some artwork for all the other students to look at. And Pedro, would you like to tell them a little bit about how you created this?
It all started when I was in Ms. Greenhouse class, and we were working on some Adobe Photoshop, and I really got into it, and then I wanted to incorporate painting with a little bit of Adobe Photoshop and some image altering. Yes. And I took the Iwo Jima picture, and I did layers of, you know, effects on the Photoshop program, and then I painted it on the wall with some permission.
Oh, and that's another nice photo of Pedro working on the mural kind of mid-process.
Any questions? No? All right. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Isn't it?
Yeah, it's up in the social studies department,
Yeah.
which has been a nice addition up there, I think.
Advanced projects give students the opportunity to develop a portfolio of work focusing on a media that they choose. John Leopold here uses his computer expertise to manipulate an image inspired by Andy Warhol. Graphic Arts Publishing produces the school annual, coordinating all aspects of production as well as sales and distribution. Students start with the brainstorming session in the fall and have the completed yearbook in hand at the end of the school year. Additionally, they produce and print a spring insert piece. John Leopold is the editor-in-chief of the 2012 Minnewacan. He has taken commercial art. I'd like to introduce him. He has taken commercial art, photography, and advanced projects. Additionally, he participated in Youth Art Month, Visual Arts Classic, and will participate this upcoming Friday at UW-Milwaukee in the Vision Year Design Challenge. And John I'd like to introduce him and let him talk about his Visual Arts Classic piece.
Good evening, I'm John Leopold. This is my piece that I did for VAC. I took first in both regional and state for it. With our project, we had to take the truism that we put it into several different locations where it all makes sense and kind of tells a story. And one of the biggest reasons why I was able to take first in this is I took a scene that everyone could relate to. A little piece of everyone's history. It's not always the common. I mean, for one of these pieces, there was a parking ticket. Who hasn't got a parking ticket? So, thank you very much.
And also, I just wanted to mention that Graphic Arts Publishing provides students with the opportunity to run a business within the school setting. The class coordinates with Walsworth Publishing, and as I mentioned, we have a spring insert that's printed locally. We also have quite a few co-curriculars that students can get involved with. Art Club, Youth Art Month, which we've mentioned, Super Bowls is a benefit for the Habitat of Humanity, and Visual Arts Classic, and the Vision Year Design Challenge. Community volunteers attend sessions in the high school ceramics studio to make pottery bowls for Super Bowls. Also, all the art teachers in the district have students make ceramic bowls that are brought to the event. The art department and the food service department coordinate the publicity and food donations and preparations for the event, which takes place in Super Bowl Sunday. And when the event is over, we wind up making a donation to the Sauk and Columbia County Habitat. We raised about $1,800 this past year. Also, the event is partially funded by the Sauk County Good Idea Grant, which provides $500 for clay and glazes used for the pottery bowls. So basically, you make a bowl, buy lunch, help build a house. It's a good concept. I'm just going to talk about Art Club.
Yeah, so we have a pretty good group of students who come on a regular basis to the art room after school on Thursdays, and we do all kinds of different things art related. Some of the pictures you see behind me is on the left. We have our students working on our homecoming float, which is always a really big fun event for them. Get to do some designing and learn about structural integrity of things as you're trying to put it all together. And then on the bottom right you see there's Carly Diedrichsen is actually working on building the dragon head for Willy Wonka's musical. If you went and saw the musical, you might recognize it. So we try to get together with some of the other organizations in the school and help them on an art-related end if we can, and propose new project ideas to our students in art club as well. So it's been a really nice group of kids. We have had a student develop a design for our t-shirts this year and printed them. I'm wishing I was wearing it right now, but it's been a very good experience for them and for me. And one of the other things that we do as a part of Art Club and the art department is this Youth Art Month that you've heard us talk about. The first step is that students can submit work through us into a statewide show, or a regional show, excuse me, down in Madison at Hilldale Mall. So we're able to take enough work to fill about 2 of these tables full of artwork from the school here, and we present the work there. Then they have judges come through and select one piece to move on to a state capitol show. So it's a beautiful experience when you get all of these students from all over the state together in the Capitol Rotunda to look at their artwork and the artwork of other students. Oh yes, and those are the panels up at Hilldale. It's really good exposure for the students, a good opportunity for them to see their work in a setting outside of school, which I think is really rewarding for them. Oh yes, sorry Nicole. I would like to introduce Nicole Newby. She was one of our participants in Youth Art Month this year, and she is one of the students who had work selected to go onto that Capitol show.
I'm Nicole. This was the piece that was entered, and it was just a still life that I drew. It was with pencil, and I just went over a permanent marker, and yeah.
And it was at the Capitol?
Yeah, and it was in the Capitol, and I got to go there. Everyone just met up.
Cool.
Thanks, Nicole.
Just a little bit about Visual Arts Classic. Visual Arts Classic is a competition that's sponsored by the Wisconsin Art Education Association, and it has a regional event that's held at UW Baraboo. Students prepare a long-term project in a variety of media, and they come up with a visual solution to a problem. Some of those problems can be fairly complex. They take their long-term piece there, and it is judged there, and while there they participate in a related on-site activity, and those pieces are judged as well. They also participate in a critical thinking team competition and quiz bowl competition about art history, artists throughout art history that relate to the projects. So it's a great opportunity for students to see work by their peers, and if they win a blue ribbon either in long-term or an on-site, their work then goes to UW-Madison for the state show. And we had quite a few blue ribbon winners, so we did go to state and participate, and it was all in all a very successful experience. We also participate in the Visioneer Design Challenge, where we take students to UW-Milwaukee. That's coming up and they work there with professional designers in a variety of fields, architecture being one, with the School of Architecture for the UW being the only School of Architecture being at UW-Milwaukee. So they have the opportunity to participate in a variety of areas such as there's graphic design, digital photography, architecture, urban and regional planning, and so on. So it's also a really great opportunity. And I just wanted to mention that we have an art show that's coming up. It'll be starting to be put up this week, and it'll run from the 30th through the 10th. I'd like to invite you all to stop and see. We do have a lot of prizes. We have pieces that are judged by quite a few volunteer judges, and I'd like to ask you all to stop and see it. We will have a awards reception on the 10th about 4 o'clock, I believe, 3:30, 4 o'clock. So thank you very much.
To present you with a recognition from the Baraboo School Board, Honors for Excellence. And Pedro, it was actually your artwork that I saw that kind of inspired me to contact Ms. Greenhall to say, could we have you come and present
Thank you.
tonight?
It's an honor.
It was great.
It's really an honor. Thank you, ma'am.
And Taylor, thank you for showing your beautiful artwork, and congratulations on your success.
Thank you.
And Jonathan, he's probably dreading me saying this, but I know him from North Freedom School, and even back then he was drawing in the classroom and was very creative, so I'm glad to see you're still following your passion. And thank you for the leadership with the yearbook. And Nicole, you've grown up too. Congratulations on the work that you've done and your artwork being recognized down at the Capitol and in Madison. I hope you continue to have you come up. Thank you for igniting the passion in our students and allowing them to follow their dreams and what they enjoy. And it's obvious from seeing your work tonight that we're going to see more of it in future years, and I'm sure it will be a part of their lives. Something that can't be measured with test scores, but we all know how important it is. So this is just a certificate of appreciation for the contributions that you make to the school district. Thank you.
Thanks again.
And thank you to Dr. Witzenthaler for the recognition. And again, a thank you to Nicole, Pedro, John, and Taylor for making us a part of your night tonight. Enjoyed the presentation. And to Marlis and Beth, thank you to all of you. Brings us to reports. First up, I'm going to turn to Mr. Cummings as Chair of Building, Grounds, and Transportation for points 1 and 2.
Okay, our annual strategic plan, safety plan, was on, I can't remember what day it was. We did have a report in the hard mail here, and Crystal stayed a little longer than I did, so she would probably have a better report.
Well, the summary here shows who was included in that meeting. We had a number of local agencies represented, the Sheriff's Office, Fire Department, Police, EMS, and we had Jim Jozwikowski, who you've met before, who is part of the environmental management consultant firm that we work with. And we did do a pretty thorough review of the current safety plan. In particular, I just want to note that we reviewed line for line the gas leak protocol moving forward, as well as any hazardous substance spills. We, I think, learned a lot and got a lot of good information from those agencies regarding those issues, and then a number of other things that we also reviewed. Molly has done a lot of work in putting the team together and updating the plan and bringing all of the agencies together, as well as Danny Scott. So Molly, I don't know if there's anything else you would like to add about the process or what we'll be doing moving forward.
I think you encapsulated most of it. We do meet regularly every year. We did have some action steps come out of this meeting where we're hoping to finalize the gas leak policy and procedure, the hazardous spill policy and procedure. We'll also be looking at maybe inviting the outside agencies in and completing a drill regarding a hazardous spill, which is something that we've not yet done in the district. We're also looking at formulating somewhat of a job description, so those people that are on our building emergency response teams are clearly aware of what they've signed up to volunteer for. So we appreciate your interest and Mr. Cummings, your input, and we'll continue to keep you updated.
I guess one of the things that come about in this thing, when you have an emergency, you can't really plan for one, because if you knew it's coming, it wouldn't be an emergency. So Molly and the bird teams and stuff like this, getting information that they can use and adapt to the situation as it happens and stuff. So it seems like everybody, including the fire department and the police department, the sheriff's departments, we're all worked pretty good and have worked together in other past emergencies, bus accidents and what have you, and stuff. So.
Yeah, the critical incident training is something that we just started this past year, and we did an intruder situation, and we decided to take our focus to another area and perhaps look at the chemical spill. And so we'll continue to work with our agencies. Every time we go through any kind of a drill, even a standard tornado drill, we learn things from each situation and try to adapt and make changes based on what our needs are.
Okay, and then the summer project bids. I just talked to Jim before the meeting here, and he does have the up-to-date on the bids and stuff. Jim?
Yeah, we're still in the early stages of this, but this was all prompted by a rumor, I guess, that we had awarded a $60,000 contract to Terrytown Plumbing to put a new well in, and obviously we haven't awarded any bids at all yet, and Midstate will be handling that bidding. So what I did was went through that whole list of approximately $250,000 worth of projects and explained how we're proceeding with these as we go forward, and anything over $15,000 according to board policy has to come before the board, and they will. In a number of cases, we've invoked exemptions as part of the policy where we have just a single vendor, or we have a system in place where this is a very small part of it and we're not going to change vendors in the middle of the stream. So like I said, we're just getting started, so I have nothing really more to report on that other than the maintenance shop is working hard on these, and we hope to have everything that needs to come before the board to the board at the first or the only meeting in May, I guess. Are there any questions on what I submitted?
Okay, now anybody have any other questions to say on the track project or the wall project that we could? There's not really much to update at this moment, but does anybody have any questions on either one of those projects?
Point of Beginning has been on site since last Monday working on the track project. You'll see that the fence is up and there are some pilot holes dug and all that kind of stuff, but they'll really get rolling this week is when Dean Bloom will be moving on site.
Also then, as if we go according to plan, on the 30th of April, we'll have bid openings for the middle school, and also a full board meeting that evening to approve the projects for the bids. So.
We held a pre-bid meeting last Wednesday for Al to explain to the estimators from the 6 invited general contractors how the project should unfold, and to answer, I think more to answer questions than anything else. So we're just kind of waiting to hear who's going to be involved, and I'm sure we'll know a lot more by 4 o'clock next Monday.
Are there any other questions on the projects? Any of the projects?
Okay, thank you for that update. The last report, which is number 3, really is not coming out of Buildings, Grounds, and Transportation. It wasn't a committee meeting, but last Monday, Dr. Ritzenthaler and I had a preliminary meeting with a couple of representatives from a firm called Epstein Ewan Architects, or EUA. Kit Daly and Bob. Yeah, Bob. I'm not sure how to pronounce his last name, but the purpose of that meeting was, as the board members are certainly aware, and probably a lot of the public is aware, we do have a 5-year facilities maintenance project list that was compiled by Mid-States, but that is primarily, well, not primarily, it's exclusively maintenance projects. And those who may have seen the State Journal, I think it was today's State Journal, where they talked about the condition of buildings at the in the Madison School District. Was that today's paper?
Yeah.
Again, their information that was in the paper was primarily, if not exclusively, related to the condition of the buildings. What Kit's firm has done in the past for other districts in the state of Wisconsin is they have a multi-phase process. The first phase of the process is to collect data that they would get by talking to community members, the board members, city officials, looking at different ideas and opportunities that the district has to look at how we utilize our existing space, our classrooms, our media centers. Are we making the best use of the facilities that we have? And also to project moving forward based on enrollment projections in different grade levels. Do we have suitable space in each of our buildings, the elementary level, the middle school level, the high school level, to accommodate what is going to be coming 3 to 5 years down the road? It was just a preliminary discussion. I think that it would be advantageous to invite them to speak before the full board and give you their overview. Probably, I don't know if they would both come, but certainly Kit would come before the board and go into a little bit further detail about what they collect, how it differs from what Mid-States provided to us, provide some examples of what they've done for other districts, and get some input from the board as to whether or not we believe that that is something that's beneficial for the district as part of strategic planning. Because it's one thing to be concerned about and try to take care of our maintenance needs on the buildings, but do we have the proper facilities to implement the programs that we have undertaken, and are we prepared for what we are going to be doing 3 to 5 years from now? So it's really just more of an informational update piece. I would hope that the board would be open to hearing a presentation from them as to what they can provide to the district on the process of gathering information and kind of educating us as to what they can do. And if we're so inclined, we can try and arrange a meeting with them at some point in the near future.
I think the thing that sets this firm apart from perhaps a couple of others in the state who do something similar is that as part of the process, they have someone working with them who is considered a communication specialist. She's pretty highly regarded in the state. And so she's used to and has a lot of experience going out in communities and listening to what the needs are for the facilities and gathering that information in a way that makes sense and kind of helping districts through that process. So I think she could probably articulate it better than I could, but I'd like to bring her back to at least have that initial discussion with the board and allow you an opportunity to ask questions of them.
Have you heard from other districts, recommendations or what have you on this, or how did you find out?
She could provide a list. I called her cold. I knew that we were dealing with some enrollment issues, and she's associated with this firm now. She was associated with Baird. And we just started talking and decided to have a face-to-face just to learn a little bit more about what they do. They did come with examples from working with Columbus School District and Menasha, were two that they provided. They're very tuned into 21st century learning environments and what those look like, and coming in to provide recommendations as a clear set of eyes in terms of how your buildings are configured and whether you are using the space in the best way. So I think, if we have that discussion, it's more than just numbers and seats and classrooms. It's about program needs, as Mr. Vodak said. It's about, administrative space. It's about all of those things that we're kind of at a point where we need to make some decisions moving forward. So I'd like to bring her maybe the May 14th meeting.
Well, yeah, and just maybe I didn't mention, but you know, when they go into other districts that do not have a 5-year maintenance capital improvement project plan like we do, they essentially have to do that. They would work off and base their information and their results back to us, incorporating that. They're not going to duplicate it. They're not going to start over. So that gives us a leg up on a lot of other districts that may not have had that document available for them to start with. So it may allow us to get a little bit further down the road in the process with them, as opposed to another district that is basically asking them to start with doing that capital maintenance facility study.
So they're more like efficiency experts or something like that.
That's a lot of it, yep.
How do they compare or contrast to Bry, who we've had come in and lay a foundation of work for us already?
Well, they talked about that a little bit, and obviously made sure that they weren't, undermining the value of those other firms, because they're primarily designed in or delve in design and construction. Whereas before you design and construct something, you need to know what you need. And they come in to look at what we have, where we want to go, what the projected enrollments are, what our space needs are, and come up with a general concept of, you need more space here, you need less here. So Bry doesn't, you have to give Bry what you're trying to achieve. They're not going to come in and say, well, based upon your enrollment projections, we think you need to do this, or based upon the square footage of your media center, we would advise you to do this. They're going to just essentially take a plan, work with you to develop a plan, and move forward with that plan. So I think it's a little bit different in that aspect. At least that's the way that I walked away from the meeting. Feeling.
So a possible outcome could be just reconfiguration of usage of our existing space?
Yes.
Yeah, it could.
Or adapting that space or modifying. I mean, take the media center here as a prime example. It might not be adding on space. It might be how we configure the current space that we have.
One of the things that they brought up, that there's a number of communities that they've gone into that employed neighborhood elementary schools, and their recommendation when they got to the end of phase 1 was to close those schools. Well, we're not in that process right now. We're beyond that. So I think that it's more of a looking at what our current buildings are, assuming we're going to use the current buildings that we have, and what can we do to better utilize the space that we already have, and do we need anything in addition to that moving forward. So it was a presentation that I think would be beneficial for the whole board to hear, and they're very down to earth and straightforward, and made sure that we understood that, like Mid-States, they said, well, nothing against Mid-State. Mid-State does a fine job of what they do, but Mid-State does not come in and assess enrollment projections, our needs for space 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the road. So, Mr. Mortimer, you got a question?
How much do they charge for this service,
Probably once we meet again and they have a better idea of what we need them to do, keeping in mind that I think certainly the aspect of having that 5-year capital maintenance project list certainly is going to allow us to get a little bit more bang for our buck, because they don't have to duplicate that. I think the answer to the question is, it depends upon how far we want them to go.
How many facilities, what we want them to do. We've got this process laid out, but maybe we say, you know what, all we want you to do right now is help us collect some data.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of surveys do we use? Who do we reach out to? What kind of meetings do we have? What stakeholders within our district do we involve? It's really future planning, like Kevin said. It's creating that vision of what we need. Part of what the elementary group has been talking about is the current elementary schools in our configuration. The fact that GLW has bubbles all the time and we don't have enough space for 3 classrooms for each grade level. That means we're transferring siblings in and out of that school and back and forth between other schools. So I think we need to look at all of that. We need to look at how many transitions kids make between schools, between 4K in middle school. We need to look at middle school space. We're talking about online programming next fall there at that site. Just as we have designated space here at the high school, we don't really have designated space at the middle school. Well, is there a way we can look at some of the current space and reconfigure it, or is there a need to add on? So all of those kinds of discussions that we need to have, and they can help us through that process.
Do they also differentiate the space needs of like the special needs students versus our technology needs versus,
Yes.
because all those have different
Right, and they've done that with other districts, particularly looking at new programs and programs that districts now are starting to implement. We talked about the STEM classroom, the potential of more alternative education programs within our school buildings. So all of that is up for discussion, but they've been involved. They also have some models and things that are in place outside of the state of Wisconsin.
So if I understand correctly, this next meeting where they will be presenting to the board will be informational. They're not charging for that meeting.
No, this is
giving
what
us,
we do.
Right, they're giving us samples
An opportunity to ask questions.
Would it be okay if they got us a packet of information ahead of time?
Sure.
So we could ask more direct questions, or?
Well, the information that you were provided in the board packet is pretty much what we were given when we met, although they did have other
They had samples of some of the work
stuff.
that was done.
Yeah, samples of stuff they were using. And one thing that we talked about was that if we are going to involve stakeholders, community members, staff in this process, we've obviously gone through a strategic planning session, and we have a strategic planning group. And rather than try and reinvent the wheel, let's try to, as we had talked about at the strategic planning meetings with our strategic planning a year ago, this can be incorporated into that. It's not running parallel to it. It's not duplicating something we've already done. Let's work this, provided the board decides to go ahead with it at some level. Let's work this within the strategic planning group that we already have. So.
As long as it's not ed direction.
But Ed was at the strategic planning meeting, so.
Educational direction.
Oh, okay, I got you. Any further questions on that information? Thank you, Crystal, for your help walking through that. Brings us to the portion of the agenda entitled Consent. For Finance, I will turn to Chair of Finance, Mr. McNevin.
Finance Committee met. We move to approve bills.
I will second.
Motioned so eloquently by Mr. McNevin, seconded by Mr. Cummings. Any questions? Hearing none, those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carried. Brings us to personnel recommendations, the first of which is the acceptance of a resignation of Deanne Lensert from the high school social studies position. Entertain a motion to that effect.
I will so move.
Second.
Motion by Cummings, seconded by Mortimer. Any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Brings us to B, the approval of new hires. You were provided background in the board packet for the rationale behind the requests. One is to fill a vacant position. That would be A for Melanie Hill. And then the addition is Carolyn Michelson. I would entertain a motion for the approval of those hires.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Vidro, seconded by Riley. Any discussion?
One of these positions, filling the, didn't we have a part-time?
Yeah, we posted for a position. We had a late resignation last year. We couldn't find a full-time person. We hired somebody from out of state who was willing to come and work with us just this 1 year on a part-time basis. So we did have somebody here, I believe was a .5 position, and has resigned. .4.
And this person is taking that place?
Yes.
Okay.
Further discussion?
In a recent board meeting, last board meeting or meeting before, when we recognized our school psychologists, it was very clear that they are overwhelmed with responsibilities for handling what needs to be handled, running back and forth between schools. So this is an absolute necessity for the welfare and caring of our children.
And their responsibilities are actually going to increase next year. Sorry, Steve. Marshall. With RTI, response to intervention, the role that they'll play with the teams within the buildings. We've talked a lot about the need for a social worker, and really those positions go hand in hand, and that's why with the comparables that we showed you from some of the Badger Conference schools, we tried to pick schools that were a little above our enrollment and a little bit below our enrollment. And you'll see that we've got FTEs for school psychs and social workers and what those total FTEs are, and you can see that Baraboo is near the bottom in terms of staffing and the number of facilities that we have here in our community. I also want to indicate that the funding, we're reallocating the off-site program costs from the Civic Center, the reduction of speech and language positions, and the remainder would come from the flow-through federal grant.
We have the federal grant next year too?
Yes.
Further discussion? Having a motion and a second, those in favor of the approval of the new hires as listed, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. For C, which is the approval of postings, I'm going to ask you to bear with and follow me momentarily, because underneath number 2, I need you to add, or ask that you add, middle school math. Middle school math, a position, posting for a position of middle school math. And then we're going to move backward because the middle school math position and the need to post is because Meg Perrone is going to move into the middle school computer science, which is number 2, so you can eliminate number 2 off of your list, and the third one you added now becomes number 2. So we have 2 approval of posting requests. One is for high school social studies, and that is due to the fact that Joel...
No.
No?
We have the middle school computer science vacancy listed on your agenda because Joel Mindham, who was in that position this year, is assuming the role of the high school business teacher.
See, I thought I had it right, and I didn't have it right.
So,
okay, so again, we're going to not have number 2.
Correct.
We then do need to have high school social studies. So I would ask for the approval of the 2 postings, high school social studies and middle school math.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Petro, seconded by Cummings. Any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carried. Brings us to D, which is Valerie Gregg's contract reduction from 60% to 40%. Entertain a motion to that effect.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mortimer, seconded by Cummings. Any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor of the motion as presented signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
do we need formal approval for the transfer of Joel Mindham to the high school business position and Meg Perron from middle school math to middle school computer science?
So moved.
And that was seconded by Mr. Cummings, I believe. Do you accept that, Mr. Cummings?
Yes, I will.
Is there any discussion further? Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you. Are we sure we're done with that, or are we
I
going to
think
come back
we're-
to it again?
I think we're finished. Oh, one more thing. Thank you for asking that. We have a May 14th board meeting and a June 11th. We're at the time of the year where I come to the board and I say, if we have any resignations between now and the next board meeting, I would like permission to post those. Now, those are only for vacancies, not for any new positions, so that we can act in a timely manner and get those positions up so that we attract quality candidates.
Okay. So
moved.
is there a second?
I'll second that.
Motion by Vidro, seconded by Riley, to allow for the postings between the board meetings of May and June to fill vacancies that may develop. No additional positions other than vacancies.
In April and May.
April and May. Sorry. Both. Further discussion? Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carried. I'm going to wait just a few seconds to make sure we're not going to go back to it again. New business, the approval of the staff and student trips. First up is the FBLA students and advisor to the National Convention in the summer, which is actually after school's already out. I would entertain a motion to approve that. Thank you, Mr. McNevin. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Mortimer. Any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor of the FBLA students and the advisor heading to the convention, which is in where?
San Antonio, Texas.
Texas in the summer. All right. Signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Brings us to the French students and move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Mr. McNevin, seconded by Mr. Mortimer. Any discussion?
They have chaperones and stuff for those. That's normal.
Many chaperones.
Well, I just.
Are there any seats
In
for
fact,
board
we
members?
usually have more volunteers for this trip than we need.
Is there a board member seat?
How's your French?
Comme ci, comme ça.
Did we vote? I forgot. No.
Not yet.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Brings us to B, the High School Media Center materials, a parental request. We had a request to look at a book from a parent, and we are at the point where that request is now before the board.
Having read the file, including the initial concerns, the responses, the reviews of board policy, the national policy, our board policy 3612, and the rules attached to it, a rather complete and an exhaustive review, I move that we accept the book review committee's recommendation.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carried. And those that are on the book review committee that are here tonight, thank you.
Thank you. They put in a lot of time.
Yes, thank you. And thank you for being here tonight. Brings us to C, which is the open enrollment exception due to confidentiality issues. I will leave it at that. The information was provided in your board packet. I would entertain a motion to allow the open enrollment exception.
I will so move to accept that exception.
Second.
Motion by Cummings, seconded by Vidro. Any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Brings us to 9, which is the continuous school improvement. And just a word of note, that normally would have been earlier in our agenda, but we are trying to accommodate those that had other obligations to be with us to
I think
present.
they're here. They're here. Great.
I will turn it over to Lori.
Tonight, Teresa Lean is here, instructional facilitator for the school district, and Angie Montpes, who's also our district K-12 district reading specialist. And we want to talk to you tonight about coaching and mentoring leadership. And is this going to work for me? Okay, so the purpose of tonight's discussion is we want to share the need for our district instructional facilitators and coaching. We also want to provide you a very brief update on our state's educator effectiveness and how that has an impact on our district. Provide some data on our coaching and mentoring efforts, and then outline a vision for moving forward into the next school year to provide support for our administrators and teachers for the 2012-13 school year. So a quote that I will read in case it's too far away for you in terms of needing instructional coaching. One doctor or teacher might make a difference, but not for long. Going it alone is a recipe for burnout or reaching a plateau. Not only do the best in their field get better by working as a team and continually planning for improvement, but they also employ a set of external ears. And that's a significant piece or role of what a coach does in our district. And so when we talk about the need for coaching, we want to focus on growing our best teachers and administrators for our students and families. And we know that the best way to do that is ongoing continuous support in the classroom, providing feedback, collaborating, analyzing student data together. Also, we know from the McCrell lab out in Colorado, which is an educational lab, that effective teachers make a significant difference or impact on our student achievement. Intentionality is something that we've been working on this school year with our essential learning targets and creating a common language of instruction. And so we want to make sure with our coaching efforts, intentionality is there with our instruction and that we utilize the best research-based instructional practices. And then also as a district, we've invested quite a bit in our coaches, and we want to guarantee the integrity of our coaching model and make sure that we are getting the outcomes that we intend to get with our coaches. So another piece of growing our best teachers is also being directed a little bit through our state in terms of our educator effectiveness. With our supervision and evaluation process, administrators have the ability to impact professional growth of teachers on an ongoing basis, and that's being impacted by the state's initiative with the educator effectiveness timeline. So this school year, the 11-12 school year, our state has been working on developing a framework to evaluate teachers based on performance-based evaluations. It's a framework that all districts will have to use, and that's the model that's being developed. How are we all going to use that model to be implemented? And for the 2012-13 school year, you will see that there will be a number of school districts that will act as pilots to pilot that framework and model in terms of evaluating the effectiveness of teaching staff. The timeline is indicating that as long as resources are there, and they do make that statement that on 2014-15 is when they're expecting a full implementation statewide. What that looks like, just a little bit more detail for our teachers and principals. Each of our teachers, each of our principals will be evaluated with this model where 50% of their evaluation is based on models of practice and 50% is based on student outcomes. So when we look at models of practice in terms of teachers, they are rated on the INTASC standards, which stands for Interstate Teacher Assessment and Support Consortium. It's a very robust set of teacher standards that's used nationwide, and also using Charlotte Danielson's framework for evaluation. So we currently as a district use Charlotte Danielson's framework, so we're happy to see that that's the model or the framework that the district is choosing. And with our principals, they will be evaluated with the ISLIC standards, which has been part of our evaluation this year with the whole administrative team. So that's 50%. That's our models of practice. The other 50% is based on student outcomes. So if you look at that 50%, the first 15% for our teachers is based on the state assessment. And it'll be based on growth of students, not attainment. The other 15% is based on district assessment data. For our district, that could be Fontes and Pinnell reading assessments, it could be the MAP assessment, it could be the Explorer Plan assessment. The other 15% there is student learning objectives. These are much like our essential learning targets. And we will measure the effectiveness of our teachers based on student attainment of our essential learning targets with our common assessments. So that equals 45%. For our elementary and middle school students, 2.5% is based on school-wide reading data. For our high school students, 2.5% is based on graduation rate. And then the other 2.5% is district choice, which that's a little nebulous and not really sure, but in terms of looking on the website, it looks like it could be a strategic plan goal, for example, of how we'd want to, bring that together. Sean?
What's 2.5% of what? Of the 2.5% of the 100%?
Of the 50%, yeah, and of the 100%, yep. So just real quick again, this 50% is based on 15% state assessment, 15% district assessment, 15% student learning objectives, And if you were elementary, middle, it's 2.5, 2.5, and if you're high school, 2.5, 2.5. I think that's to 50 grade.
Is that new math?
Am I doing it wrong?
So it's of the 100%. It makes
Yeah.
up that 50%.
And how does our district assessment data fit into the picture? How do we
So-
measure that?
So we measure that currently with MAP as an example.
It's
Okay.
student growth.
And how do we individualize that per educator then?
That's yet to be defined. So right now at the state, there are work teams for each of these areas defining explicitly what that looks like. So more to come on that. That's why if I go back to the timeline, you can see that's still very much in the development phase.
Lori, what was that district choice again? I just went right over my head.
District choice, still very nebulous, as I was saying, school teams are working at, but when I look at what's available on the DPI website, it seems to me a natural selection would be for us as a district a strategic plan goal and how we would like to measure that with our staff. Okay? And as we know more information about that, we can bring that to the board as an educational piece under school improvement. I share this because this has huge implications for us as a staff and as administrators because this isn't the way we currently do business. And it's going to require us to change a little bit the way we do things in terms of monitoring our effectiveness and providing feedback and coaching support. We currently do target areas for growth using our supervision evaluation process. And I wanted to note that because this is data that our coaches can use in working with staff to target those areas that seem to have the biggest impact on student achievement. So here's just a few that we've noted over the course of this year, and just highlight a couple of them. You know, we know the use of essential learning targets is important in terms of sharing with our students, this is what we're working on as a target. If we don't communicate that to students, we know that sometimes that leads to confusion, and we can be much more efficient with our instruction if they know. You know, disposition is on the bottom of the list, and we've talked about that as a board. Disposition meaning, do our teachers believe that all students can learn and be successful? And so these are things that as administrators, as coaches, we work on our staff to improve upon when we give them feedback. Now I'm going to turn over to Teresa because she has some data collected from her years of service as an instructional facilitator in the district.
In 2005, I reported to the school board the future forecast and teacher needs from 05 to 2020. So our new teacher program began in 2005. Since 2005, we have hired 146 teachers, and currently 116 of them remain in our district, which is 80%. And to my knowledge, none of the teachers who have participated in the mentoring program have left education. In 2005, 16 teachers started the new program, and 13 of them remain in our district. 10 of them have bought homes in Baraboo. 9 of them have active leadership roles in our district, and 11 have or are earning advanced degrees and certifications. And this is the cohort I chose to look at because it was the one that had the most undivided attention with mentoring and coaching. And the retirement influence on our teacher shortage is far from over. I know we had a large amount of teachers retire last year, but we will have 79 teachers who will turn 57 in the next 10 years, and that's a third of our staff. And we have to remember that the baby boom year, 1957, those folks haven't turned 57 yet. And then in 2005, I also reported on the national attrition rates for teachers that was current at that time. And the attrition rate has increased and gotten worse since 05. So in the early O's, they forecasted 1/3 of new teachers quit within the first 3 years and half within the first 5 years. So as you can see, if you look back to our teachers who have remained in the district, that's not the part of it to parallel with this as much as it is that the teachers have remained in education. And now the researchers have found that there's a higher rate of dissatisfaction in teaching, so they anticipate that this attrition rate will increase. This was recently done in 2012. And of course then the predictions of how many fields the younger generation will work in before they retired has increased as well. I think there's two other interesting factors to remember, and that's our enrollment in teacher prep programs in the Wisconsin colleges have decreased in the recent years, so they're not producing teachers as they had been. And then in 2007, when we're talking about building needs and stuff, this is what it reminds me of. There were more births in 2007 than 1957. So 1957 was that baby boom year, and 2007 beat them out nationally. And those children, of course, if you do the math, are entering our classrooms, and more classrooms will be needed. So that's the teacher part. If you have any questions before I talk about the...
I want to make sure I heard the takeaway.
Okay.
It sounds to me like on the broad scheme, a large percentage of teachers are leaving in the first 5 years. In the Baraboo school system, I heard 80% of our teachers are staying and staying longer, and making commitments by buying homes and taking advanced degrees, etc. So Baraboo is doing something reasonably right.
Beating the odds.
We're beating the odds, and part of beating the odds is the implementation of much of the coaching and mentoring and professional development work that we as a district have committed to.
Yes.
And one might be able to make a correlation that the more of that work we do, the better our statistics will be for our teachers and therefore for our students. I just want to make sure I got that right.
It's not only retaining those teachers, but also attracting those quality teachers to our district in the first place. Quite often they've already heard of our mentoring program. And I want to note, because they probably won't toot their own horns, but I did include a letter from Charlotte Danielson, who is nationally known for the work that she does in education. And she has had some interactions with Teresa outside of this district and speaks very highly of the program that we have here in Baraboo.
There's only one little part that I would add, Peter, is that the attrition rates, when they're talking about 1/3 of the teachers leaving and half by 5 years, they're leaving the field. And like I said, so far as I know, the 20% that have left, they have left for family reasons. They haven't left the field, to my knowledge. So, you know, that is even a greater impact.
Thank you.
Teresa, the snapshot that you give here, the overall picture is 2005 to 2012, but the statistics you're giving us are current. That is, 50% of the entire staff is less than 10 years of experience. Yeah. That is current to right now.
Yes. Yes.
That's current now. Just maybe a comment on that. Depends on what researcher you talk to. Novice can be considered less than 5 years of teaching. Person that we hold with a lot of regard is Robert Marzano, and he talks about the art and science of teaching, and he talks about those teachers that enter a classroom right out of college, and you can just see it that they're made for this position. It's their role, it's their passion, but even they take 10 years really to develop a toolkit of strategies to be able to appropriately address any situation that might occur in the classroom, whether it's behavior or academic instructional strategies. It takes that time to develop that expertise to be able to really make huge gains with students. So it speaks to that need. Want to talk about administration?
Sure. So the historical data, as far as I know, on administrative attrition has never been put together. And so, again, my knowledge base is running from 2005. And we have had 3 C&I directors in 7 years. And there was a time that there was a time without a C&I director. There have been 3 pupil service directors and 1 interim, so 4 in 7 years. And then the, I have to read it off of here because sure, this is not been really easy to figure out, but there's been 3 high school principals in the last 7 years and 7 APs, 5 Jack Young Middle School principals and 3 APs, 4 at West, 4 at Abe, 4 at North Freedom, 3 at Jill W, and 1 at East. So that amounts to about less than 2 years in our district.
That's a little deceiving too, because some of them went from one principal job.
Sure,
up in
sure. But when there's a shift in leadership, there are things that happen.
And you expect that really, would you? Part of your concept of raising or bringing your own staff up along the ladder up there. So.
But it speaks to the need to support our administrators, and it's an issue in our state that there isn't a real well-developed mentoring program for principals. And I know that's something that our state organization, ASA, is focused in on most recently. But it has a direct impact on our teaching staff when a new administrator comes into any of these roles, has a different vision, or takes hold of what the initiative was prior and starts running with it. It creates a little instability, I guess, for a little bit of time before we get going again. So sometimes the expression I've heard with our staff is a false start. That they're tired of false starts. And I don't think that that's something that we can blame on anybody or anything. I just think it's the current reality of our district, and we would like to see more stability in these roles and support for our principals, in particular when they come into a building, to help them be successful. So it's building the capacity of leadership in our district.
And it actually needs to begin before then, because we need to take a look at those teacher leaders who are aspiring to take on those administrative roles, and we've had a few of those, especially over the last couple of years. Got one sitting here tonight, and so we need to support those master teachers, those teacher leaders, so that there's a smooth transition into those administrative leadership roles.
Maybe the last thing I tie back to it too is, again, knowing the future of effectiveness and how it will be measured for our district, we want to provide that ongoing support for our principals as well. Okay?
Okay, yeah. At this point in time, we're anticipating 16 new hires and then 2 administrators, and there are, to our knowledge, 6 aspiring administrators within our teaching staff. And we have gone from having no initial educators using PDPs to 80, I believe.
80, wow.
Yeah. And that doesn't include the 16 that'll probably come in with them. So I suspect, because I like to make my predictions, that we'll be over 100.
We rely on Teresa's predictions. She's
They're always
pretty
right.
accurate.
She's got a high accuracy.
We start out skeptical, but
yeah,
she's
then
pretty accurate.
yeah, they're believers after the year starts.
So what we included in your board packet tonight was a visual to outline how we would like to sustain Teresa as a full FTE as instructional facilitator, but look at how we are utilizing Angie differently in the district, maintaining her still as a 0.5 district reading specialist, but then also utilizing her as a 0.5 instructional facilitator, because we see that there's a greater need as we're bringing in more teachers to support them in that growth. And again, we want to grow our best teachers and administrators for our students and families. So in that visual, you'll see that they've outlined their roles and responsibilities to move forward in the district with those different areas that are essential. And I'll let them talk about those activities specifically, but I just want to address the funding. We are able to do this kind of shift in Angie by reallocating dollars that we currently use in Title IIA, which are federal dollars that are designated for high quality instruction for teachers and principals. So it's federal dollars that are allocated for professional development. And what we would like to do is take the amount that we've allocated for second year mentors and reallocate that to Angie, because we feel that we can better support our teachers in that second year of teaching by shifting our focus and using her in the classrooms more.
And part of that is just not what administrators perceive, but it's part of the data that Teresa has collected from those teachers who have been in the program about what's been most helpful for them. Definitely year 1 mentors in the buildings are helpful, but relationships are formed and change, and second year teachers' needs are a little bit different. So we're finding the need for a formal second year mentor in the building less helpful than someone like Teresa Lean working in the classroom with those teachers.
We've done, every year we do several different checks with new teachers, and every year at the end
especially year 2 mentors, because their support is based on experience rather than the coaching is based on the expertise of pedagogy and classroom and things like that. So they felt it was more valuable to have that, because now as they're entering their 2nd year, they see the things that they need to work on more clearly, and that can be accomplished through the coaching rather than the mentoring.
So what Teresa and Angie have passed out is we have been working over the past couple of weeks here, planning out what this could look like and our vision for next school year. And we really mapped it out by calendar so that we can show you we're being very transparent with the needs that we have for both of these individuals in these roles. So I asked them to highlight just a few things, so I'll hand it back to Teresa.
I'll start with one that's near and dear to my heart, is the PDPs. As you've heard me come to the board with several different teachers and sharing theirs out. They're authentic tools, and as someone that was raised on the credit system and also taught those credits to teachers, I know that the PDPs are much more powerful vehicles for moving best practices and impacting student learning. So I'm excited to really build that stronger with the new teachers. We've done a great job. They've been fabulous works of art and science. But the challenge now will be to try to move the teachers who are under the credit system to utilize those PDPs as well. So currently the number is 1. There's only 1 teacher, and that's myself, using a PDP to license. And so my goal is to make that more attractive and build reasons why teachers under the credit system would use the PDPs to renew their license in advance.
Teresa, can you just go over the main components of a professional development plan so they understand how that's different than taking a class?
Sure. You build a goal, and then you have at least 3 objectives. One that is about what you're going to learn as a professional, and the second one is how you're going to implement that, and then the third one is how you're going to assess that within your students' learning and how it has impacted student learning. And then the big piece to it that's so different than the credit system is that it is a work in progress. It's not a sit and listen, and gain your credits. But it's ongoing, and then you gather evidence, and there's a lot to it. There has to be, for initial educators, a team that verifies this PDP before they start, and then looks at the evidence at the end. And for professional educators, the people under the credit system, it's only at the end of the PDP. But there's several steps, and it's collaborative, which means we need lots of people involved, and the reading specialists have been involved, and administrators, and so we hope to build that.
I understand, Teresa, that the team that you work with, or that the teacher works with, includes a university, a faculty person for your institution, and that those individuals can be hard to find. For a long time, they were not being paid for that time. Are they being paid now? Are there local faculty?
Right there. Yeah. We have all our reviewers in-house. We have teachers, administrators, and our higher ed people who are all trained within the district, which again makes our support unique, because many districts, those teachers are on their own. Go find your own reviewers,
right.
Pay for those reviewers. This is something that we offer. There's no charge to the teacher. There's no charge to the district. It's part of the roles that they have. And Teresa certainly qualifies as an IHE, having taught for 7 universities? 11. Yeah, behind. So I don't know if we have anybody else in district.
Yes, Corey Paschal is one too. So we have all of that in-house, which makes it even greater, because a teacher writes their PDP and decides who they're going to collaborate with, and then may reach out to someone in their building who is, teaches a different grade or a different subject area, who becomes a part of their team. And there's that wanting to help or ownership or support that they provide then for that PDP to go forward. So I know that in the state, because we've earned the PDP support from DPI. They've named 13 districts, and we are one of them, that we certainly do have a unique setup for the initial educators to make sure that they're continually growing.
We have a unique setup, and this will help us leverage that setup for the benefit of our teachers' growth and therefore for our student achievement.
You know, we're always trying to build capacity in our district, and we don't want to have this great program and one person leaves the district and it falls apart. Or any program, and that's why we're really tapping into and expanding the support with Angie, and looking at other potential leadership roles with our mentors and coaches across the district.
And this plan will allow you adequate time if you end up with over 100 teachers working on their PDPs?
We've got it down to a science. You know, it's something that I've learned that you have to have ongoing. I can't just decide in the spring to, you know, break out PDP workshops because everybody's at a different point in time. I thought when this started that within years we would be more in sync, that more of the teachers would come out of their schools understanding this process. It's been less. So unfortunately, whatever's happening with higher ed, it's not making the job once they enter the field any easier. And then we have second career teachers and then teachers who get another light. We have 5 administrators also under PDPs who were formerly under credit systems.
I'm under both.
Okay.
I think what we are finding, though, as now we have a strategic plan and we have district and building goals, that teachers are aligning their PDPs with those, so they're very much embedded in their work. So what that allows is you to work with several teachers who have created a PDP with a very similar goal. Maybe it's centered around technology or assessments or literacy. And so, you know, to me that says that that vision has been created and everybody's kind of moving down the track in the same direction.
If I can just give a quick example, last year I did do a PDP, which was new for me coming from Michigan. I was under a credit system, and so I had to try and write one of these things as an initial educator, and I aligned it with the East School SMART goal, and we reported on the East School attainment of our SMART goal at 96% of our students making a year's growth. That was directly tied into my PDP, and so I used that SMART goal as part of the evidence. And so my SMART goal, or the school's SMART goal, and the school's our data retreat that we did and our goal setting that we did, we really had that dovetail really closely with those PDPs. And then I'm one of only a few in that building that are also working on PDPs, so there's a number of us all headed the same direction, which I think made a big difference at East last year.
So what I'm hearing is that part of the difference between a credit system, which is very generalized, the PDP, the professional development, can be structured to really address the current internal school challenges that often our teachers and administrators do not have the time to cope with. This provides a pathway to allow both the teacher development, the administrator support to achieve the objective that we want, which is student-focused, child-focused, within the framework that we've already created. So it's not on top of something.
No. Right. And it keeps those goals from being put on a shelf at the beginning of the year and forgotten about until the data retreat this spring. Because those goals then are alive and they're part of that work that we're doing every day. And so we're constantly coming back and looking for evidence of how are you doing. So when we do that goal setting now, it's got everyday importance rather than just on a yearly, so how'd we do? And it's kind of a surprise. You kind of know how you're doing all along.
And I think you realize this, a PDP is a multi-year document process that they go through. It's not just 1 year or half of a year, but it's multi-year.
And again, this is very consistent with our strategic plan.
Very much.
No, without having a lot of time to look at this, are you going to be taking teachers out of the classroom to do some of these activities?
Very little of it will be out of the classroom. If you're looking at mine, the classroom support, the classroom support for new teachers is going to involve me going and being in the classrooms with them, doing demonstrations with them, observing and giving feedback, working toward whatever their goals are. So it's going to be real-time support in their classrooms while they're teaching.
So will all your mentoring being done in the classroom be done in the classroom then? Or will you take teachers out of the classroom to do other activities, whatever's on this list, which I don't know?
The seminars occasionally could be outside the classroom. We're going to try and work them into the early release Wednesdays as often as possible.
Well, that's my next question. Why can't you do this in early release rather than hire another sub?
Some of them will be, but honestly, there's a lot of other things with the PLCs, the grade level teams, the curriculum alignment that are also going to come into those Wednesdays, and our new teachers need to be part of those processes too. If they need to have that buy-in with the district direction, they need to be able to give input in that. They're going to be a significant portion of our staff. So we want to make sure that we're not taking them away from those district goals and isolating them and putting them somewhere else. We want them integrated.
Yeah, we tried, and we did try that approach this year, and we found that we were missing many important pieces with that new teacher group that was unique to the needs that they had. You know, they were part of the PLCs and the grade level teams and the content areas and all of that, but you know, we missed some key pieces: classroom management, dealing with student behavior, special education. There were a lot of pieces that were unique to that group. So I think there will be a lot of support in-house, but we're also required by statute to provide some of that specific training in those seminars and things that are unique to new teachers.
I think we were, when we talked originally, Lori, I think we were thinking about half and half.
Right.
Half of the months it would be during an early release, half of the months maybe a release time.
Absolutely. Our intent is to be ongoing with our support, but maximize our early release Wednesdays so that we're not taking those teachers away from their students to do this work. So we'd like to incorporate as many of those mentor seminars on those early release days. But then the other piece of that is we know that our new teachers need someone in the classroom on an ongoing basis working with them. It's not always a pull out of context. We rather have them in the context of their classroom getting the support with their students there. So that's what we're trying to do. So we actually see that we'll actually have less need for subs in doing this way.
How many people do you have go in the classroom to do this, other than, let's say, does Teresa go in there and you go in there too and also help them?
My role is more of an evaluator, not a coach, although I provide good coaching feedback to teachers on an ongoing basis, but really it would be the role of Teresa and all of our literacy coaches, math coaches, to provide that ongoing feedback to our staff.
Yeah, I hear what Ed is saying too, and I think this document is the one that best explains what their positions would be, because what we're doing is, by adding Angie, she's releasing some of Teresa's time to work on these new things that we're talking about, the increase that we know we're going to have with those 80 professional development plans, that whole new educator effectiveness model where it's going to require working not only with our teaching staff but with our administrators so that we're consistent and trained in what we need to do to provide feedback to teachers. And that administrative support is a whole new thing that we've never had here before in our district. And looking at the numbers, and just this year, the number of people who are new in their role or new to administration is probably, I don't know what percentage it is without thinking about specific people, but it's pretty high right now.
How many other schools are doing this?
Doing which part?
What you folks are doing now?
All the districts in Wisconsin are required to have mentoring and support for their new teachers and an understanding of professional development plans.
And we are one of 13 districts that have been identified by the DPI as leading the way.
Correct. Yeah.
If we had to do a potential pilot with the DPI, how does that change your day?
Well, I've been following that very closely. I've been involved in little pockets of what they've been doing at the state level, and of course then nationally through Charlotte Danielson. Yeah.
We would, without getting too political, I mean, we would embrace that, because
well,
I would rather
I'm just
be,
asking the
and you know, Lori and I have both been in contact with DPI about that, and the reason I would embrace that is because we want to be on the forefront of those changes so that we can provide feedback to the people who are making the decisions at the state level on what works and what doesn't work and how things have to be modified. We feel like it would be a smooth transition because we're already using the Charlotte Danielson framework. Obviously there are going to be some tweaks to that as well as some additional pieces, But I think we're set up very well to help lead those efforts.
I see that educator effectiveness as being pretty central. The PDPs follow into that, coaching falls into that, the administrative support, certainly because now we're including administrators in this educator effectiveness. I've been working at it for a couple of years now, so I would really welcome being able to do something like that.
One of you mentioned the integrity of our coaches,
Right.
and I think if you didn't understand what that meant, with our GT coaches, our math coaches, our literacy coaches, we want to make sure that the methods that they're using are consistent across the district. I don't know if one of you were going to address that, but that is also a new piece here. Because of the other teacher leaders that we have in the building, it's going to require somebody to meet with them and to calibrate and make sure
Guarantee
that
consistencies.
And we're looking at doing that surrounding, so for example, all the coaches would be also trained in understanding the framework for teaching by Charlotte Danielson, because that's what's going to drive everything. It's a common language. It'll be.
So we're not asking for additional funding. I think that's clear. We're asking for a shift from our Title II allocation from federal grant monies that we get every year to develop high-quality teachers and administrators, and we're shifting those from year 2 stipends, which for next year would be about $35,000, to shift that to help provide this additional leadership role. Angie's already in a leadership role as the K-12 reading specialist and is serving part of our population, but she would also work hand in hand with Teresa to provide this, I think, new level of support that we're asking for.
Teresa, help me. I'm looking at your sheet where you've got using September as an example, and Angie's the same thing, using September as an example. Obviously, the 19 days, that's face-to-face days for the month of September for both. I add both of them up, I get 24 days. I know you're good at what you do, but how are you going to do 24 days worth of stuff in 19 days?
We're really amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the way we tried to do this with the days, like if you look at mine with the K-12 reading specialist, I've got meet with reading specialist team 2 days. That would be the equivalent of 4 half days across the month. It's not 4 truly half days, it's 2-hour sessions with the reading specialist, and so there's going to be some wiggle room in there, but for the ease of trying to put this into the schedule.
I just wanted to make sure that what you were laying out here wasn't unattainable, because you're missing 5 days to do it, unless you're coming in on Saturday or Sunday, which I hope
we'll
you're
be
not.
really busy.
We broke it down in days to be more understandable, I guess.
I started to work with the hours and it was making me crazy, so we...
Understood. As long as you're comfortable with it.
And I think the thing you need to understand is that, based on the individual needs of the teachers they're working with, some of this might shift a little bit. Some teachers might require more time in their classroom. We may find that with the foundation of professional development we've laid out, that there's less need for some of the seminars. I mean, I think but for purposes of transparency and looking at the big picture, we wanted to make sure that we had the year mapped out.
And are you actually looking for board support on this as a form of a resolution of approval?
We would love board support. Again, we're not asking for funding, we're asking to...
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Bedro, seconded by McNevin, to shift the allocation of funds to accomplish the proposal. Further discussion?
We are investing heavily in our physical plant, in our utilization of space, and this is an equivalent expenditure on the human resource that makes all of those other investments meaningful.
What do we see under funding? It says reallocation of Title II-A dollars. What do we use in Title II-A dollars?
Year 2 mentor stipends.
Pardon me?
Year 2 mentor stipends. So if a teacher's in their second year, they're also assigned a mentor at their second year. What we've been finding based on the feedback from teachers and the data that Teresa's been collecting, year 1 is the most valuable. Year 2, they're not really utilizing those mentors because they need somebody in the classroom with them. The other piece that we haven't had time to do, and having two people here share this role, is the data collection. We want to be more purposeful about the collection, the data that we're collecting about the impact that the program is having on our new teachers.
Sounds like another good PowerPoint discussion.
Speaking of,
we got to vote.
Speaking of that, still discussion. Who has the PowerPoint of what you presented? Can you forward that to me?
Absolutely.
And may I ask that with these presentations, it would be so helpful. I know you're under the gun, but it would. I'm a quick read, and many of us are. But it would be great to be able to review some of it.
Sure.
Because I can't see anything anymore.
Absolutely. If that's okay, I'll just. Sometimes it may be only an hour before.
Whatever time I can get is very helpful.
Okay, absolutely. We can do that.
That might encourage fewer PowerPoint slides, though.
One
Mr.
can only
McNevin.
dream.
I had a new format. Did you notice?
Yes.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carried.
You weren't finished with everything, though.
There's one more thing I want
piece.
to talk about in terms of coaching. And you also received in your board packet a draft job description for GT coaches, or gifted and talented coaches. And I did put up on the PowerPoint, which you can't read, but you have it, the goals for that. So for the benefit of
some of the stuff I have.
Good.
Some of the stuff I have.
So for the benefit of some of our members who don't have access to the board packet, the goals of these individuals would be to ensure continuous services for our high potential, high achieving students across all areas of gifts and talents, not just academic. Support differentiation in our general ed classroom with all of our teachers. Monitor student data to facilitate our district's gifted and talented identification process, so that we don't have to rely on our parents to come to talk to us and say, I think my child might need more services, but we will monitor the data and we will reach out to parents and say, I think your child might need more services. We would like to also have these individuals provide ongoing building level professional development opportunities in terms of differentiation and how do we best meet the needs of gifted and talented students. These individuals would serve as an advocate for students and families in the building, promote communication about services and enrichment opportunities to both students and families, and then also secure necessary services in terms of social emotional needs that some of these students might have. And so that's just a quick overview of the goals. What we are intending is that these individuals will be certified teachers that are already teachers on our staff. We would like to have one per building, and they would be trained in models of gifted education and also RTI. They would be coordinated by me, and so we would meet on an ongoing basis to talk about what are the needs of the district and guarantee those consistencies. They would work with Teresa and Angie through that coaching model. And we're viewing this kind of what we have done with our math coaches as an extra duty with a stipend. We would like to perhaps someday see that grow, but this is a start.
Is that $1,500 a year?
A
semester?
year. Yep, a year.
As the math coaches are paid. And again, what we're looking at, because we're constantly evaluating the effectiveness of the resources we have, we're currently taking a look at other co-curricular positions. We're looking at number of department heads and things like that. And so as we go through that process, we anticipate that some of those leadership positions will shift from some of those more traditional leadership roles to things like this. So it's not necessarily an add-on, it's a work in progress as we evaluate some of those other leadership roles.
Move to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? Question, you're looking at about 7? I'm just figuring.
7, correct.
Okay.
Yes.
And we have this board approved a very extensive stipend relationship for various leadership roles that is under reassessment, connected to the strategic plan, that will be used to reinforce many of these positions.
Having a motion in a second, any further discussion?
Crystal, what do we have, so right now as far as gifted talented program? We have a half-time staff?
You're looking at Lori, that's
Yep.
it right now.
Okay.
Not that that's not great.
Well,
It's
but
great,
I think that's
but
a good question. Yeah.
This is at the building level. And, we used to have assistants working They were not teachers and trained in the curricular areas. This is an attempt again to bring that support back at the building level where people know those students and are looking at that student data. It's responsive to our GT plan and what we're trying to get into motion. It doesn't meet all the needs right now, but it's a great start.
Right. I see a significant need for these individuals at the building level. I would not do the role justice from my position at central office and the duties that I do. The coordination is essential from my office, but I need people in the buildings who will have that face-to-face contact with students, teachers, and families on an ongoing basis.
Laurie, I know this question's loaded with a lot of caveats because any given year there could be any given number from 0 to many, many gifted and talented students. But is there a general percentage that might fall into a category like this?
Yes, and it depends on what percentage of students we want to give the label of gifted and talented. If we go back to the RTI framework, we know that about 15 to 20% of our students would fall into a continuum of where they would need more than what they're getting in their classroom. But there's going to be about 3 to 5% that really need intensive supports. And so some school districts are looking at that RTI model and looking at their gifted and talented plans for identification, and they're only providing that true label of gifted and talented for the 3 to 5%. And what I would like us to do as a district is do something similar, but these people as GT coaches and our staff would serve the full 20% that really need services. So it varies. It's going to vary, population to population, and it'll vary definitely within the buildings, but that's a good rule of thumb, about 15 to 20%.
Okay. Thanks.
It's a bigger percentage than our students with disabilities.
Any further questions from the board?
Is that a comment?
Hi.
I wondered if I can say something. I'm a parent and one of like 50 families who are interested in this, and I think it's a fantastic idea. You would ask like what's going on in GT, and I don't mean this as a knock to the schools, but the program has been gutted. My son, who's in 8th grade, is just behind all the changes. Like every time something disappeared, it was his class, and my daughter's 2 years behind. And I saw in East School, there's some amazing teachers there, but gifted and talented was totally up to the teacher, or if you had a pushy parent. And I think this is a fantastic solution because they'll be saving time with us not having to meet with them and nag them. But
we'll be meeting in a different way.
Yeah. But the thing that I saw like in East School is that, there were like 3 competitions for gifted and talented. So like a few hours, 3 times a year. And sometimes teachers chose the kids because like they didn't make the cut for the spelling bee, so now you can do math 24. Well, it doesn't mean you're qualified for it. Or they would take volunteers for these things. And it's like, that is so not meeting the needs of the kids who really need it. And I've been really a proponent of gifted and talented, but I was so glad you said that. I agree. I think it will help everybody because right now, education, this is again my opinion, I don't mean to hurt anybody's feelings, but I think you guys are forced to focus on the lower achieving kids to meet all the standards, and then these kids are kind of getting left behind and they're getting bored and they're tuning out, and I feel like, geez, these are the kids that we should encourage all kids, but these kids are really we would benefit so much more with the little amount of money that we put towards that.
They could become a population of at-risk students as well.
Well, I want to remind you too that we took a portion of the curriculum budget and designated a portion for gifted and talented for this next year as well. We felt it was important to make that statement that there are funds designated for this. We're also looking at our current policies, and the policy committee will be reviewing some new policies and some revisions to existing ones to help align with our GT plan.
Sounds like the problem for the educational direction committee.
No.
I think we should meet.
The committee we tried to kill.
I have another PowerPoint.
Sure you do.
Well,
will the ultimate goal be providing gifted and talented kids who are identified with IEPs?
Yeah, I think if we look at just that 3 to 5% with a true identification of gifted and talented, those would be students that we want to have a differentiated educational plan, the DEP for. Yes.
Yes.
A DEP?
DEP,
Okay.
yeah, an IEP, a DEP.
All right, got it.
Correct, right.
Any further questions? Having a motion and a second and no additional questions, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Before we go into closed session, I just want to mention our board vice president, Doug Meering, is not with us tonight because he is in Boston as a representative of CISA, National School Boards Association Convention in Boston.
CISA's paying for it.
CISA's paying for it, yeah.
Well, I thought you were running the marathon.
He will, I'm sure, have a report for us when he gets back. And I also wanted to mention I have a plaque for Mr. Ray Borkenhagen for his service on the board for 3 years, and I thought maybe he would be here tonight to present that to him, and he's not. So I will find him and present that to him in the near future and thank him for his service. With that, I would entertain a motion to go into executive closed session.
Second.
Motion by Mortimer, seconded by Cummings.
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Thank you for your attendance tonight.